Thank you. Here we go. Yeah. So let's see what Apache can do with Samba AD and what we need to get that working. So about me, probably most of you have attended my yesterday session. I'm still an infrastructure automation freelancer. I worked with Samba for quite a while, and I'm doing this Samba AD stuff for, well, kind of 6 years now. Right, so let's have a look quickly at how Apache does authentication, then switch over to Kerberos. Authentication without a ticket, and a better solution that I in the end implemented. So, how does Apache handle this? You have the concept of vhost with a configuration. And you either have, in most cases, a location that has a protected URI or a directory that has one. And then in that section you specify the configuration for the protection and our options probably. There are quite a lot of authentication modules. This is a small list that was available on my server, but there are many others that you can install. So you have, if you start with this, you have too many options to go over. So yeah, then what do? You pick and try some. And in the end, it will arrange then the authentication for the application. So the application, it can either use the remote user that's available in the environment after authentication to figure out who the user of the application is, or it can check a header. And there are other ways, for example, for Python applications, you can use mod SGI with some options, and then in your Python application it's part of the request. So, Kerberos. If you want to do authentication in Kerberos, and I noticed that Alexander before lunch mentioned this module, you could use mod.gss API to do it, but you do need mod session to ensure that you don't do authentication on every request over and over again. There's not much more that you need. It needs the Kerberos package, and it needs a keytab file. And with that, you don't even have any communication over the wire with your AD controller. It will just use the keytab and go with that. So, would you have multiple servers with Apache on it? Then it makes sense to use some common settings, especially for the session ticket. So if you create the session cookie with the same parameters on every server, it will be valid on every server within your domain. So once you have authenticated on this one, you can use the same cookie on all the other servers that are in this domain. So that's why where the domain-wide keys come from. And you have the domain in the domain path and kind of different places. In the end, what we have here, what mod.gss API will do for you, it will supply, it will check the user that comes with the ticket, and if it's a valid user, you'll get the web page on your screen. If it isn't, then you'll get another message that it isn't. But in order to use it with Kerberos, you do need to configure your browser as well. So you need to tell that it can do the negotiate for certain domains, otherwise it will never send the ticket that you acquired when you logged on to your workstation. So here are two examples for Firefox and for Chrome on how to do that. And after that, we're good to go. We have a configured browser, we have a configured server, so we could do the authentication request. So with the browser, we do a GET to the protected URI, then the web server says, oh, you're not allowed unauthorized 401, and it says you can use negotiate. And when it tells you that, the browser, when it is within the domain that the browser has configured for tickets, will send the ticket and the web server checks it and you're in. And that all without any connection to the domain controller. The only thing is that it will check your user. It doesn't check whether you're authorized to see this page. So things get a little bit more complicated when you want to do authorization as well. In my setup, I used mod LDAP to do that. And then you have a round trip against the DC to validate the valid user in LDAP. Configuration becomes more complex as well. So we have the previous setup with the GSS API config, it remains, but we get extra configuration lines to do the validation in LDAP. And here I use nested groups. So you have the LDAP filter with the 1941 function to do nested lookups. Okay. Then, if we don't have a ticket, mod GSS API will fall back, if you configure that, to basic auth. And that's fine if you have an automated session. If you use curl, and it will just get the authorization basic, and then it passes the encrypt or the encoded passwords in base 64 to the web server. It tells you 200 and serves you the page. It's not so nice. It's not so nice when you're an interactive user, because it will show you this authentication pop-up from I guess the 90s. So we could quickly check that. I have two browsers configured here on the left side. That is Firefox. Firefox is configured to pass the ticket. So would we do it here? We get the Debian index page that you have by default when you set up a web server. We do it here in Chrome, which doesn't forward the ticket. We get the, oh yeah, so I don't have valid, where is it? I don't have valid certificates, but you see we get the login pop-up, and then either you enter your credentials here or you get an unauthorized. Now that's kind of ugly. So how do we go from here to fix that? There's mod form in Apache, one of the other modules. I don't know how many hundreds of modules you have. Mod form can present a form, so you can define an HTML page that will then pop up and ask you to log in. The only thing is, if you look here at the interaction, it becomes quite hairy. So you first redirect, then you have to set a cookie in Apache. This is all kind of hobby quality login, and browsers don't always react well to this. Some end up in a login loop. So this is not really oh yeah, and you get this really complex setup. So in addition to the LDAP stuff, you need to have, where do we have this, with what form? So you have to have the error document that then pushes you to another page. And in the bottom there you have the redirect, and it sets a cookie in Java. Well, this is not the nice solution, and it looks really complex in the Apache config. So now what? Yeah, we have to look for something better. And the answer is Apache can't do this alone. So you need an authentication server somewhere to do the authentication work, and then redirect you back to Apache. In this case, I decided to go for OIDC because it's more modern than SAML, and I don't like XML that much that I want to fiddle around with that. So we get another intermediate server here. So the browser will go to the web server. The web server will tell it to authenticate at the IDP. It will do its job with the DC in the background, and then redirect you back to the web server, which can then fetch user information directly from the IDP. So what does that look like? So we have the same kind of lots of round trips and interactions as with the mod form thingy. The only thing is that this is a modern protocol and it's much more robust than the hobby setup of mod form. But it's not as simple as mod GSSI. That didn't need any backend server at all. It was just one single round trip. We need other infrastructure. For example, Keycloak is the one I used here. We need another Apache module, mod OIDC. And we need to set up the whole thing in the Apache config. We need to set it up in Keycloak. So let's have a look at that. The aim is to do it like I did with mod GSSI for the whole domain. So you get stuff that works on every server returned. And for that I used an extra provider in Keycloak, the regex filter group mapper. I set up user federation to Kerberos and LDAP, basically the DC. I set up an authentication flow and client scope specific to include all the groups that you have. So the browser flow would then look like this. Either you have already been logged on and you have the cookie. If you don't, Keycloak would checks if you have a Kerberos ticket and authenticate you with that. And if you don't, you get the login form presented. Client scope. The idea is to give you all the authorization groups back in your JWT token. So we filter on name to filter all your ACL groups for applications, and then put them in the token. The client web server setup in Keycloak, it needs the root URL of your web server, and then relative to that, the protected URIs. And as an extra scope, the domain permissions that we've just set up in the client scope. Then on the vhost side, in Apache, I configure some domain-wide stuff again, so that the token that you have and the cookie that you get are valid everywhere. And then we have the really simple configuration of the protected URI in Apache. So you can check now that you have a OIDC claim with the specific permission group for this protected URI that allows you this specific resource. And because your token contains all the permission groups, you can use the same token on every server. We look how that works. Start a new page and click on the mod OIDC thingy. So this one has the Kerberos ticket, and it should do its work automatically. And the other one doesn't. Oh yeah, here we go again. Just an ID that it remembers this. So here I have to log on. And I pass through the web page. And would we look at the at the developer information network, then we would see that you have indeed quite a lot of round trips before you get here through the OIDC server. And you don't even see the background connection that Apache makes back to the OIDC server to fetch the user information. So what we did here is set up an extra authentication server on top of Samba ID to give you extra authentication for the web. That doesn't work with doesn't work with Kerberos directly, but from a Kerberos ticket you can get a JWT OIDC token, and from there you can move on to all the web servers with a single sign-on. Okay, that's it from my side. Any questions? No questions. Thank you. Oh, we have a question.
When you do the setup without the keycloak, just the mod
CSS API module,
together with the LDAP module, how do you map the Kerberos principle to the LDAP DN of that user? Can you show that?
Yeah, sure. That works quite well. Where do we have it? This one. So you have it's this little bit that gives you the valid user. And you don't need to do anything extra to get from the valid user. So it's just this little bit that I add.
So this is the auth LDAP remote user attribute that's set to SAM account name.
Yeah.
So if the
yeah,
ticket
indeed.
if the ticket of the user doesn't have the SAM account name but something else, like if the user
Yeah, then you probably don't get authenticated. I haven't come across that situation in my setup, but yeah, we had this session earlier from Alexander that made clear that this can happen.
Okay.
So there's, I think, a better option. There's a group of Apache modules written by one colleague of mine that work together with SSSD. So SSSD provides an interface for looking up this information and then applying the rules. Like you can define different rules on top of it. This came before OIDC took the kind of web world there, but it's still usable. So what it gives you is that it removes the whole LDAP lookup from the Apache side towards the backend where SSSD runs.
Is that the mod SSS?
It's the, if you go to adulton.com, then you will see those, there's a nice explanation and a bunch of the Apache modules. It's more often, adulton.com. Yeah, it's former colleague of mine here, retired from Red Hat, and the idea is that SSSD does this job already. So it has all the information. It has the normalization for UPNs and caches the additional details. So you can ask it cache instead of doing these requests happen every single time. So they every single time you authenticate, you get
but you get the session cookie. So
yes, and that one is also site aware and dynamically can switch to different things and so on. So that's one way of configuring it. And on top of that, in IPA case, we built a separate backend for keycloak. So it's a different application. It's called IPA Tura. That is essentially runs SSSD underneath to use SSSD as a cache for these requests for keycloak. And then your Apache configuration is just using what you use for OIDC case. And keycloak would be using these applications to handle dynamically access to Active Directory or to IPA, excuse me, and we'll handle both Kerberos and the password authentication and all the other mechanisms. It can be used also by keycloak to write attributes into Active Directory or IPA. So it's kind of extended. And we were talking with the keycloak team because they want to deprecate the current direct LDAP and Active Directory access.
Actually, quite a nice implementation. It works pretty well.
So for them, it's basically just a REST API talking into this application instead of keeping all the LDAP and Kerberos stuff that is a bit harder to do on the Java side.
It requires maintenance, yeah.
Yeah. So this is part of keycloak 24 and later. So 26, that is current one, already has it. When you configure keycloak, you just need to enable it because it's disabled by default.
Yeah.
And it's all in there is a documentation that has it in Keycloak itself. Now, what it allows you to do is to put multiple of these applications to spread the load. And it also would work because SSSD would work with the multi-forest setup with trust and so on. It basically hides all this complexity from the front end.
So how would add? I mean, on the machine where I run Keycloak, I have also Winbind running because it's a domain member. Is SSSD not biting if you install that as an extra component?
Well, they can work together. I mean, at some point, we would be great to have the cache sharing so that they don't really request things from each other. But Winbind already can be configured with the SSSD as the identity provider. There's a module for Samba for that. And then basically the whole resolution will go through SSSD. Winbind will only look in the areas where SSSD couldn't. So this is kind of solved problem. What is good at this is that you don't need to have any of this one.
You simplify Apache in that sense.
Yes,
yeah.
and also security-wise, this is kind of a loophole for if the attacker breaks through the setup, they have credentials for binding to LDAP here. With ModAuth GSS API, you can set it up to work with GSS proxy, so it doesn't really have access to the key tab and so on. But if you put the ModAuth LDAP configuration, then all the credentials are in the config, and config is readable by the Apache processor. That's the big blowing hole in the security config.
Yeah, it's not so nice. I mean, you have GSS API that relies on the key tab, and there are no secrets in the Apache config whatsoever. But then you get this, and you put an account.
You have this big secret there.
Yeah.
In the config, and that is like audit-wise in the big organizations that will be a problem. The caching and sessions, I think mod session use is necessary. I mean, if you want to do anything reasonable with web, you will have to have sessions and cookies and so on. So it's kind of out of necessity. It's not a big deal. And I think mod session is the standard one. It's shipped with Apache. So.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.